Hey everyone, welcome to A View from Davos. I'm Daniel Newman here on the promenade, joined by Åsa, part of Ericsson's executive leadership team. We're going to be talking today a little bit about the themes that we have seen here at Davos. Of course, AI is in focus, but I want to talk about more than that with you. But first and foremost, how's your Davos been so far?
Oh, Davos has been great. Busy schedule, but what I'm most proud of is managed to build in a little bit of pauses to go in and listen to sessions that I typically don't spend time on. So that's also been very valuable.
And you've made it from morning to evening.
Yes.
Yeah, so anyone...
We have the 7 a.m. until late in the evening every day.
Yeah, I was gonna say, everyone that kind of you talk to at this event and you see the street, it gets busy about 2 p.m. That's the busiest point. You know why? It's because everybody's at Barry's bar. Till late in the morning. But so historically speaking, over the last 2 years, one of the big themes at Davos has been sustainability. And while the sort of AI enthusiasm has sort of taken center stage this year, sustainability is still really in focus for you, and the conversations and the meetings that you're having related to connectivity and all this stuff in your portfolio. Talk a little bit about kind of what is going on in these conversations that you're having. What can you share about sustainability and these bigger Davos conversations?
You know, when I went here the first time 5 years ago, it was quite a silo Davos. You went to the sustainability Davos, the Davos for politicians, the media Davos you even had in one track, although you covered all the place. And now we had the Industry 4.0 Davos, and I think that was one of the years where we started talking about technology's impact on industry and industry transformation, but it was during this big cloud, Industry 4.0. Then over the last couple of years, I felt that this is merged. So you don't talk sustainability without talking about technology advancement and digital transformation. They have really merged. I think what stands out for this year, and we always had this year, I think it was Meta last year was huge. And this year, if you go across the street here, it's all about AI, Gen AI. But I do think sustainability is still a top priority. And we may not see it on the street all the time, but when you speak with especially the big companies, be it in shipping, be it in chemicals, in agriculture, automotive, they all think about that because we all have hard targets. We all have committed, most of them, to net zero targets. And they kind of join that pledge and also committed. And we're serious about that. One, because of requirements, but also if you really want to be part and I think competitive player in this world, you need to care about this, regardless of what stands on the street here on the signs 1 year to another. So it is critical. I would rather argue that some of the geopolitical challenges since we had Russia's unlawful invasion into Ukraine and what's happening now with Israel Gaza have probably overshadowed, because many companies need to think then, how do we manage and operate in a world where we need to adjust our supply chains for a completely different reason than when we were talking about COVID a couple of years back. But they all still require a more resilient, flexible operations, and we still need to tackle the sustainability challenges because they're not going away.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I've said though is we sort of moved from this very idealistic era of sustainability where it was kind of a branding thing. And then it seems in the last year or two, so we've moved to this very practical, measurable. People want to understand, so here's a tie into AI. How can we use AI solutions to help us better understand our supply chain, to optimize and to be able to measure? People and investors, because obviously there's a lot of green tech investing, but they want to know that they can measure and that the influence of sustainability isn't just for the sake of, hey, we want to make a great marketing story. And I got to imagine here, that's a lot of what's being talked about is, okay, we've told a big story, everybody's really excited, they see the value of sustainable investment, but now we got to start proving to all the people that all this talk has turned into to real meaningful outcomes.
Look, I think you're right, and there is some more focus on actually delivering on those commitments, and you could argue a couple of nice words, right? And that requires serious transformations, and it requires a lot of innovation. I think if you see what's happening in the steel industry, we talked about transport for a long time, right? And electrification of transport is one key enabler, as long as the energy source is green. Now, from Sweden, here we have a lot of hydro and nuclear, so we have basically, that's not a green, CO2 issue in that sense. But in some markets we have transition. I think there are some positive examples how quickly Germany actually started transition from a very coal-dependent energy mix now to a much more greener and carbon, better from a carbon perspective. Now, with that said, well, if we fix the electrification and energy source for cars, it's still made of steel. And steel is, is another CO2 emitter. So how can we make the transition to green steel? And what I've seen is not necessarily always the policymakers that are driving that transformation. Right now, it's the industry leaders across the automotive industry, steel industry, and some of the most innovative companies out there who want to challenge how we produce steel. So I think it comes back, if we want to see those practical outcomes, we need to say again, innovation, entrepreneurs, in the same way we build up an app economy with Uber, right?
Yeah.
That was all about the obsession, how can we use technology to take a friction from the consumer experience. I see so much more investments now going into large companies, into new companies, and in the heart and soul of entrepreneurs on how do we crack some of the sustainability issues by using technology. And I think what is interesting with that, then people are looking at how can we do that and do it sustainably, both from a sustainability perspective, but also from an economical perspective. And that's when innovation happens.
Yeah, and another practical, pragmatic approach or part of the measurable sustainability effort is also where you put people to work.
Yeah.
And do you put them to work in markets that also are as invested and interested in measuring and committed to their net zero? You wrote a article or a blog, I think it posted today or yesterday here at Davos and on the website, and you talked a little bit about nearshoring.
Yeah.
And that's coming back in vogue. Of course, there's been the economics that have taken a lot of work out of some of the more Western developed into Asia, China, India. But is there a movement going back to nearshoring in order to help meet some of the goals that you've been talking about?
I think rather, although I wrote nearshoring in my blog, I would rather say it's about resilience and flexibility.
Okay.
Right? Because we had this similar issue during the pandemic. All of a sudden, we couldn't operate as people. We had a shift, and there was a lot of talk about supply chain resilience. Now we're talking about it for different reasons, because we need to be able to operate even if we have problems to get shipping across, some of the seas in the Red Sea, or if we have problems with operating. Many of us had operations in countries like Ukraine. So how do you fix that, right? So all of a sudden, flexibility and agility becomes critical. You could say, then you have to nearshore. Well, maybe it's more about how can you adjust and actually become a more, redesign your value chain. And that both at a company level as well as at industrial level. So on a company level, you've been to our factory in Louisville. We took the opportunity obviously before the pandemic came, but it's been very helpful, especially both with regards if it was the pandemic or your political challenges. It's great that we show we can actually produce in a quote-unquote high-cost country, and we can do it without an economical trade-off. In fact, by using the latest technology, it's not only in 5G and our technology, that's one part of it, but also latest when it comes to reusable material. So we're talking about nearshoring, but I think it's all about flexibility and resilience, right? You could say the pandemic was challenging, the political situation challenging, and I would say very sad, what we're dealing with as a world. But I do think it all comes down to maybe not nearshoring, but how do you get the flexibility, agility? And we were in a world where being a global company was about to produce somewhere, ship it somewhere else, and try to optimize where energy and labor was cheap. Now with advancement technology, we can start to challenge that. And I think that is exciting. So if you've been to our Louisville factory, and we invested in that, and we stood it up during the pandemic. And despite operating and creating a manufacturing plant to supply all of North America in Texas, we could actually do it without an economical trade-off, right? Yes, we had to make an investment, but the return of that investment had been significant. So we actually, by employing this latest technologies, 5G, and a tech stack with IoT and AI, we've actually been able to optimize our production, so we could get 2.2 times more output per person in the plant, number one. Number two, by using the latest innovation, not only technology from our domain, but actually into materials, into renewable sources, we're able to get down the energy efficiency coupled with AI optimizations by 25%, right? And that's significant. And on top of that, we had, I think, 75% of our water is coming from rainwater. So there are technologies out there, and this advancement happening every place, in energy, in material development, in how we can use water reuse, and and resources in a better way. And of course, in what we love to talk about, the digital infrastructure. And I think the Louisville factory is a great example of how you can create a competitive advantage and make investments that are also good for the planet, it's good for competitiveness, and you know what?
Right.
We got closer to our customers. So now we need to shape for that. We could actually reduce the supply chain, well, the way our material travel to get things out 5 times. So I think it's a great example, but I think they're great industry examples. So if you look what's happening right now in certain part of Europe in the steel industry, and investments going into green steel, the actually is, and it's not only to say now we're going to do green steel, it's also to think about where do we do that? Where do we have clean and reliable energy sources? Sweden is a great country at that. There's some really exciting stuff going on in France in that domain. And I think they are rewriting the map of where steel is being produced in the world. So all of a sudden you can take a very tough challenge and create it into advantage for a company, for an industry, but also for nations. And I think that's why, from my vantage point, if we want to tackle these issues, if it's the sustainability issue or if it's the resilient in a tough geopolitical world, using technology and innovation to get the best solutions out there will be key. And right now, if as a European, I would like to see Europe invest even more in the digital infrastructure, because this will be about nations and continents' competitiveness and our ability to tackle those challenges.
Yeah, and we're seeing it a little bit in the semiconductor space, and of course, maybe there may not be a better example of the need for resiliency than what we saw during the pandemic times related to silicon semiconductors. We've seen some companies make big investments domestically in the Middle East, in Europe, because of the over-dependency. And obviously we know that, and this is a big WEF and Davos topic, is if AI is the thing, then the ability to manufacture advanced nodes is going to be absolutely critical for the sustainability of technology leadership for the Western world. So I want to wrap up and talk a little bit about Ericsson AI and sort of your transformation and maybe put it into application. Big global company, as you mentioned, from Europe to Texas, with manufacturing all over the world, customers all over the world. How are you and how is the company sort of thinking about AI itself for everything from building these more resilient supply chains to green technology to delivering next generation customer experiences?
It's a great question, and obviously we talk about AI like something that happened overnight. But
it did not.
And I heard Pat Gelsinger.
It's like 100. No, it's like 40 years. It's actually been a thing.
Yeah, and I listened to a session with Pat Gelsinger yesterday talking about the transformation happening in the chipset industry. And it's like, that was a 45-year overnight success, right?
Yes.
So this has been in the making for a long time. With that said, now it's happening because there's so many, it's computing power, it's been the development of chipsets so they'll be able to do this processing, and the algorithms and the models becoming better. So a number of things that happen, and you have connectivity so you can actually scale and connect the data you want to use. But all of those developments happen now, so that's why we see this quote-unquote overnight revolution of AI.
Yes.
I think from Ericsson's point of view, we dedicated a lot of, besides our investment in 5G, we're also investing in research, always looking at what's 5-10 years ahead. So we obviously have a team that's working right now on the next generation mobile while we're still rolling out and have a big future ahead of us just from 5G. And we started, I think in 2011, really looking at how can we use AI to transform and make more programmable networks, self-healing networks, a smarter network. And it, of course, is smarter to be able to give the quality and service you need when you need it, but it's also about self-healing, where you don't need to fix the problem afterwards, but you can predict what issues will come up in the network, and the network can self-heal itself. So that's something we put in a lot of effort in. We today run some of the largest networks in the world. We are the network producer, but we also run the actual networks on behalf of customers. So we do that for, I think, about 1 billion users in the world. So we get a lot of data from that, and we built models so we can see how do we optimize that. So that's an obvious area for us, right? Then there are lots of applications in detailed areas. The other part is obviously how we transform as a company. Just like everyone else here in the street, we think about how can we apply AI to become more productive, smarter, and better in how we work, right? So that's a big part. But then given, and I think to take it back to the sustainability topic, We did some research a couple of years back where we said if we use the digital technologies coupled with solutions that typically have some type of algorithm, AI, some smart answer coupled in that solution, if we scale just what we had on 4G, we could meet 15% of the CO2 reductions needed globally. So our impact as an industry could actually be bigger in other industries if we just roll out those solutions that we know are there. When we now see 5G and some of the capabilities possible within AI, I'm convinced it's much bigger than 15%. So that's where I think from an Ericsson perspective, one of the biggest priority besides the obvious one of improving our products and services and how we work ourselves is how can we also enable that this is being used to tackle some of the big challenges.
Oh, so I want to thank you so much for taking some time here in the snow. Beautiful Davos, great place to have an event. I mean, what a for me, first experience, and just to have the chance to see so many leaders, so many people from political and all the way to enterprise businesses, and those that are also trying to influence everything from VC and private equity.
Yeah.
It's just a great place, and I got to say, I've never seen an opportunity to have so much density of high impact meetings in such a short period of time. I'm definitely coming back, and I hope you will come back and chat to me again sometime soon. And thanks for joining me on A View from Davos.
Looking forward to that. Thank you.
Thanks,
Great
Åsa.
seeing.